Okay, so the difference between as is and buyer beware. So in New Mexico, you do legally have to disclose material defects with your property. And so when you're advertising, I'm selling as is, that does not mean, you zip your lip, you say nothing that's anything, problem with your property. It just means what you see is what you get, but make sure they see it. So you do still have to disclose if there's problems with the property. And so it could be any kind of problems: roof problems, plumbing problems, flooding problems, noise, odors, nuisances, anything that maybe you've been working around that, you have to do this, this, and this to make that work, whatever it is, make sure you disclose that. And so, you can let a buyer know, hey, my house needs work. I'm not going to pay to fix all this stuff. But make sure you tell them what the stuff is. Another thing on top of that is when a buyer is going to hire a house inspector. Sometimes a house inspector, they're going to ask to see the seller disclosure statement. That's what we talked about in the first video. Now, maybe they don't have one to give to the inspector. So, a seller might be thinking, well, if the inspector doesn't catch it, that's on them. That shifts the responsibility back to the inspector. That is not the case. So don't fall for that. If there's information that you need to disclose to your buyer that has problems to do with the house, problems with, maybe, here's another one for you, maybe you really can't sell it. Maybe you don't have clear title. Maybe there's some title work that needs to be done. Take care of that before you try to sell your property. And so anyway, disclose, disclose, disclose. Give them the good, bad, and the ugly. You don't want stuff hanging over your head after somebody purchases the house, because you are not off the hook once they own it. You are now on the hook. So I know people hate me for this one. They hate me for it. Right now I don't have any listings. I quit taking listings for probably the past 2 years, at least a year, maybe 2 years. Sellers don't like it when I walk in the door, because there's some things they want to hide. And if I feel like they're not being truthful with me, I might explain to them, if I find a problem with your property, I do have to disclose that. So please don't hide anything. You want a buyer that's going to buy your property regardless. They're already thinking in their mind, price, problems. Yeah, it's worth it. We'll take it. Okay, so don't let that scare you. So carry on, write it out. If you think of something later after you've already given them the disclosure statement, add to your disclosure statement. Have them initial it. You both get a copy. The initial is an acknowledgement that they have received it, that you gave it to them. That way they're not coming back on you later for that. So I can give some examples of what happens when a seller does not disclose to a buyer. Here's a real simple one. Okay, fast forward. They close on the property, right? That means the buyer now owns it. The seller's out of it. Now the seller's mad because the buyer did not pay him for the propane in the tank. Hey, that's on his listing broker. His listing broker, she dropped the ball on that. We're not talking a little bit of propane. We're talking 2 big tanks. This is about $1,000 worth of propane. And so I'm letting him know his remedy. This is what you need to do to get that money for your propane. And he hem-hawed around and I'm like, I don't understand why you're not pushing this. You're all upset about it. That dirty, rotten scoundrel buyer, he didn't pay me for the propane, and here's what you can do to get that fixed. And he's like, well, actually, there was something he didn't tell the buyer. Yeah. So he's afraid that if that issue comes up, which it will, it's just a matter of time, that if he presses the buyer on the propane, the buyer is going to come back on him about this other problem. Another one, here's a real estate broker. She has a listing. I'm showing houses to a buyer. He buys the property. He did get a house inspection. Fast forward, close on the property. The day he gets the keys, he tells me, he gets to the house, he was so disgusted and so disappointed. That was kind of sad to hear. He did have the house inspected, but this is something the inspector missed. Now, there was a garage door panel. We thought maybe the whole garage door was messed up. It was going to be really expensive, over $1,000. Couldn't find out. Luckily, it was a panel. It didn't cost quite as much. But the listing broker, her attitude is, my seller, she kept telling me this every time I'd ask her for keys. She's so honest. When I have to keep getting reassured somebody's so honest, that's a red flag for me. But I just couldn't put my finger on it, like, what's going on here? So every time we needed keys to get into the house, the seller would leave the garage door open, and we never had keys. I'm asking the broker, don't you have keys to the property? No, she didn't have keys to the property. And so we're just figuring when we go there and the garage door is open, the seller's probably hanging around somewhere else, just waiting for us to leave, kind of lurking around in the bushes or something. And so anyway, he closes on the property, and guess what? The garage door was open. We kept waiting for the keys. We finally get the keys. The garage door's open. It's like, that's weird. Garage door's always open. So when he goes to close the garage door, that's when he realized there was a big problem with this garage door, and the keys did not work to the front door. They don't even work. So no wonder we didn't have keys, and no wonder the garage door was always open. And so I don't know what little Miss Honest Seller was thinking, that we just wouldn't see it. The inspector, maybe they'll catch it, maybe they won't. Good for her if they don't. She won't have to fix it. She didn't have to fix it. Just disclose it. Let the guy know. He was going to spend all this money renovating the house anyway. Every house we looked at, he was describing what walls were going to get torn down and the flooring was going to get torn up and redo the windows and the plumbing. I'm seeing a perfect house and he's seeing renovation. It's in their blood. When they go to buy, they're going to change things. So just disclose it so you don't have that, hanging on your head later, because you know what? This could have got really ugly. It really could. I did let the listing broker know, this did seem pretty plausible that the seller was deliberately hiding this fact because the garage door was always open and we could never get a key to the front door. So he did send the bill to the seller. We're still waiting to see if she's going to send the check. But don't try to hide stuff on your house. It's just going to come back and bite you later. Good luck on the sale of your house.